Stay connected and stay hot with Voice It VIT Chennai. Feel the rhythm.
तुम सुनो सबको सुनाओ वॉइस इट वीआईटी रिदम तो फील करो मेरे भाई
வாய்ஸ் இட் விஐடி சென்னை கூட சேர்ந்து சிரிங்க சிந்திங்க கவலைகளை மறந்து ரிதம் ஃபீல் பண்ணுங்க
వింటూనే ఉండండి వినిపించే వినోదం వాయిస్ ఇట్ ఫ్రమ్ విఐటి చెన్నై ఫీల్ ద రిథమ్.
ഇപ്പോൾ നിങ്ങൾ കേട്ടുകൊണ്ടിരിക്കുന്നത് വോയിസ് ഇറ്റ് വിഐടി ചെന്നൈ. ഫീൽ ദ റിതം. കാതോർക്കൂ മനസ്സ് നിറയ്ക്കൂ.
Hello and welcome to the second episode of Horrible Histories, where I tell you guys stuff your history teacher could never. You're listening to Voice It, VIT Chennai's first official radio station, and this is Bhargavi. Last episode, we spoke about plagues and how life back in 1347 must have sucked more than life right now. If you haven't listened to it yet, go do it now, because we don't know if you'll be alive tomorrow, and also because please. Today we'll be talking about Nazi Germany and how people lived back then. All of us know a fair bit about Hitler and Nazism in relation to World War II, but not so much about what daily life must have been like back then. Personally, I feel like this aspect of it is more important because rote learning history isn't going to do anyone any favors. And as we see a rise in nationalism and dictatorship around the world, it becomes even more important to look back, relate, and understand. Scholars who've studied Nazi Germany present us with two questions. How did the German Republic, which was one of the most democratic political systems in history, succumb to Hitler and his brand of nationalism? And how were decisions made in Nazi Germany? More importantly, how did ordinary people respond to these decisions? But before examining these questions, we need to remember that humanity is resilient. Humanity is resilient even or especially in the face of evil. A new political regime may present and enact policies that harm many people, but for those who benefit from said policy or are at least not immediately affected by it, many just wake up, get ready and go about their days. While the Nazis, for example, perpetrated atrocities against Jews and other people they deemed second-class citizens, most Germans were simply living their lives. Government officials indoctrinated children as curriculums were shifted to push the radical agendas they possessed. Propaganda films took over classrooms and teachers who stepped out of line risked being reported. And while all of this was happening, while one of the darkest chapters of human history was being written, most Germans went on with their lives. They got married, they gave birth, and they died. In 1938, writer Erika Mann published a book called School for Barbarians: Education Under the Nazis. And this is important because if we are to truly understand what living in Nazi Germany was like, we have to experience it from the perspective of children. Every child says Hail Hitler from 50 to 150 times a day, immeasurably more often than the old greetings. This formula is required by law. If you meet a friend on the way to school, you say it. Study periods are opened and closed with Hail Hitler. Hail Hitler, says the postman, the conductor, the girl who sells you notebooks at the stationery store, and if your parents' first words when you come home from school aren't Hail Hitler, they have been found guilty of a punishable offense and can be denounced. Hail Hitler, they shout in the Jungwerk and Hitler Youth. Hail Hitler, cry the girls in the League of German Girls. Your evening prayers must close with Hail Hitler if you take your devotion seriously. Hail really means salvation, and it used to be applied to relations between man and his God. And you can see how dangerous it is because deification, as in painting a person to look like God, is very dangerous and is one of the biggest signs of fascism, right? And before we move on to some darker stuff, here's a promo from yet another fantastic RJ of Voice It.
Hello everybody, you're listening to RJ Meghna from Voice It, the first and official radio club of VIT Chennai. In today's world, majority of our decisions are influenced by superstitions, myths, and delusions, and they spread around like fire. These myth conceptions can indeed be exasperating. So, are you ready to witness the fierce battle between myth and truth? Well, if you are, then tune in to my very first show, Bursting the Mythical Bubble with RJ Bhargavi on every Wednesday from 6 pm to 6:30 pm. So stay connected and stay tuned to Voice It for some extravaganza. Until next time, it's me, RJ Bhargavi, signing off.
Welcome back. This is Horrible Histories episode 2 and the year is 1940. You leave your house in the morning, Hail Hitler on your lips, and on the stairs of your apartment, you meet the block warden. A person of great importance and some danger, the block warden has been installed by the government as a Nazi guardian. He controls the block and reports on it regularly, checking up on the behavior of its residents. So it's so worth it to face right about military style and to give him the big Hitler salute, right? With the right arm as high as it'll go. All the way down the street, the flags are waving, every window colored with red banners and the black swastika in the middle of each. You don't stop to ask why. It has to be some sort of national event. Not a week passes by without an occasion on which families are given one reason or another to hang the swastika. Only the Jews are exempted under this strict regulation because Jews aren't Germans. They do not belong to the nation, so they can have no national events. On your way to school, you meet the uniforms. The black uniformed SS men, the men of the volunteer labor service, and the German army. And if some of the streets are closed, you know that an official is driving through town. Nobody has ever told you that the high officials of other countries pass by without the precautions of closed streets. And when a building is going up, the workmen are gone, probably because of the national event. But the sign is on the scaffolding. We have our Führer to thank that we are working here today. Hail Hitler. This familiar sign that you see everywhere with men at work, on roads, barracks, even sports fields, what does it mean to you? Do you even think of a world outside with workers who needn't thank a Führer for their jobs? Definitely not, because what you have imprinted on your mind is the sentence, deep and accepted as an old melody. There are more placards than you can count as you continue past hotels, restaurants, indoor swimming pools and whatnot. They read, no Jews allowed, or Jews not desired here, or even not for Jews. And what do you feel? Agreement, pleasure, disgust, opposition? You don't feel any of these. You don't feel anything at all because you've seen these placards for almost 5 years. This is a habit and it's all perfectly natural because of course Jews aren't allowed here. Why would they be? 5 years in the life of a child of 9, that's almost his entire life because after 4 years of infancy, 5 years is his whole personal conscious existence. Through the Nazi street walks the Nazi child. There is nothing to disturb him, nothing to attract his attention or criticism. The stands sell Nazi newspapers almost exclusively because all German papers are Nazi and foreign newspapers are forbidden if they don't please the men at the top. The child won't be surprised at their huge headlines that we know to be false. Like something like Jewish gangsters rule America, or the communist terror in Spain is supported by the Pope, and something like that. That's how it is in the world. The child thinks, what luck we're in to have a Führer. He'll protect us and he'll tell the whole bunch, the Czechs, the Jews, the Americans, the communists, and the priests, where to get off. The German child reads this at, there is no other condition wherever Nazis are in power, And here in Germany, they rule everywhere. And their supremacy over the German child, as he learns and eats and marches and grows up and breathes, is complete. And this isn't just one ignorable aspect of it, because those who control children invariably control the future. And as for when children grow up to be teenagers, we'll see that in the next segment after this short break.
Has your life just become a monotonous rut, day in and day out? I suggest you spice it up with some crazy and demented incidents on Crackdown with your host, the man, the myth, the legend, RJ Aryan, exclusively on Voice It. 7 p.m. every Saturday. Find your truth.
This is RJ Bhargavi and you're listening to Law Letters. This is a segment where I introduce you to some odd laws around the world. So, without further ado, let's jump right into this. When you're down a couple pints, any idea sounds pretty good to you. Driving is one of those that really shouldn't, and most countries have laws against drunk driving, which is not surprising. But, have you ever looked at a cow and thought, yeah, that'll get me home? Well, the Scottish aren't gonna let you. You're liable to get fined for, that's right, drunk cow riding. It sounds a little specific. Well, it's actually an archaic law made in the 1800s when cows were actually viable modes of transportation. They just haven't gotten around to amending it. Then again, maybe they shouldn't, considering how much the average Scot drinks in a day. Speaking of archaic, here's one from 1313. This is actually the last time we had a major pandemic, the Black Plague. But this law talks about a different kind of protection. It made it illegal to don a suit of armor in British Parliament. It hasn't been repealed to this day, since suits of armor aren't as fashionable as they were in the Middle Ages, so why bother, right? Now, on that fashion front, there are loads of weird laws. Governments seem to love dictating what people can wear. Here's one. Men aren't allowed to wear strapless gowns in Florida. It's actually illegal. However, spaghetti straps and collar neck gowns, those ones are fair game. Here's another. It is French law that men do not wear loose-fitting swim trunks in beaches, pools, and other public places that call for swimsuits. This is why French beaches are filled to the brim with men wearing Speedos. It's not because they really love Speedos, no. Nobody likes Speedos. The reasoning behind the law was that Speedos aren't something people can wear all day, so wearing specific swimsuits means that it'll definitely be cleaner than just boxers and swim trunks that they'd otherwise be wearing throughout the day. France seems to have some more odd laws, actually. In the town of Sarpernoch, I'm not sure how you pronounce it, but in a part of France, you cannot die within the city limits unless you already have your burial plot purchased in the local cemetery. This has to do with the fact that the cemetery is full, so the mayor issued an ordinance in 2008. He added, offenders will be severely punished. Okay, sir. Another law that came from beachgoers and their antics is in Barcelona. It's illegal to be shirtless there. This is to keep the streets clear of topless people coming in from the beaches. It kind of makes sense. But the fines for not having a shirt on can dent your wallet pretty bad. It goes up to around 216 euros, which in terms of INR or rupee is about 22,000. Ooh. So remember the next time you're in Barcelona, don't take your shirt off. That's it for this installment. I hope you guys learned something new today, and if not, well, there's always next time. Catch you on the flip-flop.
Hi, welcome back again for the second time. For many young people in Nazi Germany, right? Young people and teenagers, memberships in groups like Hitler Youth offered a feeling of excitement belonging, and even power. So they were obviously really enthusiastic about participating. Think the very annoying Twilight fandom, but genocidal. Obedience, conformity, and the desire to please parents, teachers, or group leaders also really influenced young people's choices, right? Hedy von Nagel grew up in Nazi Germany, and she writes of her childhood, and I quote, "As my parents' second daughter, I was a great disappointment to my father, who wanted to produce sons for the Führer and for the nation. And because he was of nobility, he wanted to carry on the family name. He was furious that unlike my fair-haired, which means blonde, older sister, who looked so Nordic, I had been cursed with auburn hair, that is brown hair, and dark brown eyes. Then came a third child, this time a male, but he was a dark-eyed redhead, which was another letdown for my very patriotic father. Only when another son was born and proved to be the very model of a tow-headed, blue-eyed Aryan was my father satisfied. At last, he said, the child I wanted." Our parents taught us to raise our arms and say Hail Hitler before we said Mama. This type of indoctrination was universal. Children experienced it in kindergarten, at home, everywhere. We grew up believing that Hitler was a super god and Germany an anointed nation. At the same time, our parents and teachers trained my sister and me to be unquestioning helpmates of men because as individuals, we had no right to our own opinion or to speak up. From this, we can see that oppression is often multi-fanged. The Nazis oppressed Jews, yes, but they also oppressed women. To fight patriarchal oppression without recognizing racial oppression would be futile and honestly really, really dumb. Or vice versa, right? And it's really frightening to see how this same rhetoric of only recognizing one thing at a time has carried on to this day, but that would be another conversation for another episode, so we'll save that. The Nazis knew that it was especially easy to manipulate children at that age because if you can drill the notion into their heads that they were from a tribe or a race that was especially valuable, or if you can tell them something about the Germanic tribes, right, their loyalty or their great battles, or how their women let themselves be hitched up to carts to fight against the Romans, you instill in them the notion that you are nothing and your people everything. That's how children were brought up in Nazi Germany, and that's how you manipulate a child. We're drawing near the end of the episode 2 of Horrible Histories, and the first part of our Nazi Germany theme, of which there will certainly be more. But throughout it all, life went on. The people of Germany lived in and simply accepted the new normal that came with the rise of fascism. A state of normalcy that, if the war had ended differently, could have become normal everyday life for much of the rest of Europe as well, and maybe even the rest of the world. And this is where we draw lessons from. The Nazis were definitely to blame for the Holocaust, but it didn't just happen because the Nazis were in power. It happened because Germans, people like you and me, ignored the signs. And that is why we learn history, so that we don't ignore the same signs, except in different colors.